Hello. Things I want to say is before I made my first, you know, video response 20 videos, I had considered doing it from time to time. And one I had seriously considered doing was when you did, I think, police brutality. Fortunately, at the time, I just wasn't in the right place. It wasn't ready. I feel this kind of gives me a second chance. And I guess let me start off by saying I know I have family who are cops. My uncle was a police officer and sergeant in the New York City Police Department. My cousin, she's in the New York City Police Department. And I'm not really close to them. My grandfather, who died before I was born, was a police officer, and I believe my great grandfather was too, and he died when I was very young. So although these people are really, really close to, or pretty close to, I feel like I have cop blood in me, kind of the same way I've Italian and Irish blood in me, even though I've never been to either of those countries. And I've known a few cops. I would say most of them are good people. Think of one or two who are maybe I use the word douche to describe, but I could also like one guy I know is one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. He's the type of guy you want to be a cop. He he has told me one point before he became a cop, he worked with special needs kids. So I mean, look, I don't know him that well. I mean, who knows? He could go home at night and beat his wife and kids, but he just comes across like a really good guy and seems like he went into it for the right reasons. And I know it doesn't mean much. It's one person, but I just think we always look at the one or two bad cops, and we seem to put it on all cops. And to say, I think most cops are good people, even if they are not always pleasant to deal with. And I think there are a few reasons for that. I, first of all, their lives are in danger every day. I mean, I've heard most police officers never fire their gun in their career. But I've also heard what we don't think about is every time they pull someone over, whether it's for speeding or maybe just to give someone a warning because their tail lights out, you don't know who you're pulling over, and if they're afraid they're being pulled over for something else and they have a gun, you are putting your life on the line just walking up to the car. So right there, that's going to put stress on you, and then add to the fact that most of us, when we're dealing with cops, it's usually not the best situation. We're probably being pulled over or something, and so we're not happy. And a lot of us will give the police officer an attitude, whether we're pulled over justly or not. If we're going 5, 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, uh, which I'm going to say most of us do, and a cop pulls us over, you know, you complain, why are you stopping me when there are drunk drivers out there? Of course, if they don't pull over someone who's speeding and they kill someone, then you're upset at the cops. So I feel they have to deal with a lot of unpleasant people or unhappy people, uh, take it out on them. And I think anybody who's spent time working dealing with customers or customer service realizes, it can wear on you. And I just think it's particularly tough in that situation. And I have found, for the most part, in my dealings with police, outside of, you know, casual, but, if I've been pulled over or something, if you treat them with respect, usually they will treat you with respect back. And I think that, I think it comes from, like I said, because I have known enough police officers, I trust them, and I think not trusting them can make things worse. And I'm not saying you should automatically trust them, but to be automatically be anti-cop, and they're out to get you. You can be cautious, but respectful. Uh, I've though I've had a couple of situations with police where I didn't do anything. I was actually, but I was actually walking home, and I had a cop car pull in front of me. Cop, she gets out of the car, and she actually asked me to put my hands on the hood of the car, and she patted me down. Uh, After she did that, a minute later, she just told me that there was a burglary committed in the area with someone wearing something similar to what I was wearing. Uh, I know another time I was being stopped at a red light and seeing two cop cars in a shopping center at a green light, but just stopped at the green light. Didn't think much of it. It was late at night. I thought, maybe they just like stopped there talking to each other. My light turns green. I go. A couple seconds later, they pull out behind me. Lights go on. Uh, a third cop car pulls up in front of me, and a fourth one ends up in the parking lot next to me. A couple of them get out. License, registration, and they actually asked me to open my trunk. Now, four cop cars pull you over. I got a little nervous, but I realize I'm not being stopped by four cop cars because my inspection is expired. So when they ask me to open my trunk, I do it because I know I didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing to hide in there. Maybe might be embarrassed because it's messy, but they've already seen the inside of my car. Uh, and that's the thing. I understand because I know someone who had or started about someone in a similar situation where they refused to open their trunk because you have the right to do that. But my feeling is, we have a lot of rights that we don't have to exercise. You have the right to spew hate speech, but that doesn't mean you have to exercise it. And maybe I'm a little naive and I trust cops too much. I mean, look, I'm a white guy in a predominantly white area being pulled over by white cops, so I don't have that distrust. But by doing that, they look through. A couple minutes later, hand me my license registration back, and he said, yes, sorry for the inconvenience. He actually apologized, and, there was a crime committed in the area with someone driving your model car. And I look at how that goes if you don't trust police and you don't open your trunk. And I'm not saying people don't have reasons to distrust police, but if I hadn't opened my trunk, there it's going to lead them to suspect that I'm hiding something. That would be my assumption, and I think it would be reasonable if you find the type of car you're looking for, and someone won't open their trunk. You wonder if they're hiding something there, and now they're going to hold me longer, which is going to be more convenient for me, more convenient for them. It's going to be longer till they find the person they're looking for. So I think trying to be as cooperative as with police as possible is generally the best idea. Again, like I said, I trust police more than most people. I hadn't realized recently how many people like just hated, distrust police. I know people didn't like them because generally, like I said, their dealings with them are tickets and stuff, and they're bad dealings. But the total distrust, I didn't realize how how much. And this is why I am not a big fan of, I'm not going to say the movement, but the phrase Black Lives Matter, and I would say to an extent also Blue Lives Matter, because I feel it it pits almost like blacks and cops against each other. Uh, would I, and I feel like a lot of these shootings that have happened, whether you believe they're justified, overreactions, trigger happy cops, or whatever, by saying Black Lives Matter, it really makes it seem like these are all racist, uh, and maybe some of them are, but the idea that they're shooting these people just because they're black just seems. I have trouble believing that most, if any of these are they're shooting them just because they're blacks. Maybe they distrust blacks more, and vice versa. It leads to everything being more confrontational. Um, so, I mean, a few things I was looking at. I mean, you mentioned the statistic we have more people in prison and jails than any other country in the world, which is true. The one thing I would say is more than that, you want to go to the percentage of the population in prison, which we are still, we're number two behind a country that I had never heard of, and I will try and pronounce, but I could be totally butchering. Said Chiles, and it's a small country, so I mean, yeah, obviously the smaller the amount of people, statistics can be skewed. And one of the things I was reading is that while we have the largest percentage in of population in prison, it's due to, or at least partially due to, the length of the sentences imposed, which I guess is subjective. How long do you uh, incarcerate people for what crimes? They said there are actually, though, a lot of European countries who uh, send more people to prison each year by percentage than the United States, but they, like I said, their sentences aren't as long. Uh, I know to say, one of the reasons for the increase in prison population is the war on drugs, that there are a lot of, drug users in jail. Uh, and obviously, there are different feelings on whether or not, you know, drugs should be illegal, whether it's all drugs or certain drugs. Because there's obviously a big difference between someone who is addicted to a drug and, you know, the violent crime offenders. That being said, I believe one can lead to another. As someone who was technically a victim of a violent crime, I would, where, the store I worked at, I was closing up, and as I walked outside, someone grabbed my arm, and I had a knife in his other hand, pulled me back into the store, grabbed me hard enough that I had a bruise on my arm. They said technically if they found the guy, he could also be charged with assault. That being said, the thing happened really. It happened really fast. People were like, wow, I bet you were terrified. And my reaction was not really. Uh, Not trying to sit here all brave and macho. It's just that it happened so fast, and my feeling was that I almost felt like he was more nervous than I was. He was very jittery. The one thing I remember, and well, I can't tell you for a fact. I would bet all my money that this guy was on drugs, and he was just trying to get money for drugs just by the way he was acting. So I think there is something to. I do believe in making at least most of these drugs illegal, but I also think how we deal with these criminals after they're incarcerated is one of the big issues. It's more or less just punishment, and obviously people need to be punished for their crimes, but there's no. I feel like it's not. I don't know. There's not enough based on rehabilitation or treatment. I mean, if it isn't, I feel like, if it is a drug user, and that's all they are being charged for, you know, they should be put in a treatment facility. And I'm not saying, some 30-day program. There should be a punishment involved, but it should be geared towards drug treatment, and you'd like to see more programs towards rehabilitating these criminals. So when they get out, they're less likely to commit crimes again. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff costs money and raises taxes, and people don't want to pay taxes. But the other thing I would say is, as bad as it seems, one of the statistics I was reading was that, in, between 1993 and 2004, violent crime has decreased. They say, was it 79.8 to 20.1 out of every 1,000. Sorry, I write down crimes are violent crimes. So that's basically a quarter. So that's a big difference. And the violent crime rate in 2014 was the lowest since 1970. So I do think things are getting better. There's never going to be a perfect situation to fix this. Um, and I don't know, like I said, the system is broken. I don't know if it's necessarily broken, but it can be improved upon. Uh, I guess a few things I would that I think might help, but I don't know how realistic they are. First of all, I said, like I said, if it's a drug offender, make it more of a treatment facility. You know, have programs in place for rehabilitation. Say a large percentage of the prison population have mental illnesses. So a treating that while they're in prison, and then preemptively. And again, I always think it's hard but in schools, if the kids could have more time with counselors and stuff, and maybe therapists, they could maybe identify issues they have earlier and maybe steer them in a different direction. Um, Again, if mental health, we always hear mental health issues brought up, when there are these shootings. But I very rarely hear solutions, and it's funny because I think one of the things that would help the most would be universal health care, where these people have access to, uh, you know, whether it's a therapist or a psychiatrist. When you have someone with mental illness and they can't afford these people, you know, they're not going to get better. Unfortunately, the same people who are saying that these gun shootings, we have to address mental illness, are the same people generally who seem to be against healthcare. Uh, the other thing I would get into, you guys both mentioned, cops carrying guns, and I guess both felt that they shouldn't, and I think it's a nice idea. I don't think it's realistic in this country. I don't think you can compare us to other countries in that situation because unless we really have changed our gun control laws and maybe even ban guns, I don't think it's realistic to have the police not be armed. It, and even if you did ban guns, as we always hear, criminals will still get them. I think it would be obviously be less, but when your police are out armed by criminals, that's a dangerous situation. And remember, a lot of these other countries, they have much stricter gun control laws, and I just don't think we'll ever get to that point in this country. Between the Second Amendment and you know people in this country love their guns. If you try to take them away, you can have riots. So I think if the criminals are going to have guns, the police unfortunately need to have guns too. And I do think when reacting to some of these situations, and I'm not saying again some of these they're not some of these situations not totally wrong, but I think sometimes they overreact. When you are heading into a situation where a crime was committed, you're going to be on higher alert than normal. Uh, and I always look at uh, the role the media plays. The white cop shoots unarmed black man makes a great headline. Cop shoots, criminal suspect who turned out to be unarmed is not as splashy. Uh, and then, you hear them I go to the Ferguson thing, and, you know, people, you could take whatever side you want, whether it was justified or not, but there were a lot of eyewitness reports of the cop having shot him in the back, which I believe is part of what led to, you know, some of this Black Lives Matter movement and the riots that happened there. And unfortunately, as something goes here, eyewitness testimony is very poor. Because as they said, they found three different medical examiners, including one hired by Brown's family, all determined he was not shot in the back, he was shot in the front. Now, again, he was unarmed, but and this is where it gets into not knowing what's in the police officer's head. And if we believe in innocent till proven guilty, I think you have to take into consideration what these officers might have been thinking in different situations, where if they feel their lives are in danger, they may overreact and it may not be rational. But I think, and I don't want to condone what they're doing, but it's not necessarily criminal, and I feel people tend to make it out as these, it's like, trigger happy gun toting police officers and racist police officers, just out to, whether incarcerate or shoot a black person. And yeah, it's why one of the things I read somewhere someone suggested is, that police should have more community outreach programs where if people in the community get to know the police and realize that they are just normal people, maybe they'll be less likely to distrust them. Yeah, God, I know this is probably my longest one so far. I'm sorry. So I guess we'll stop it here. Again, I don't think there'll ever be a perfect solution, but I think there are little tweaks that can be done, hopefully, to make it better. I also think we're more aware of some of this stuff now, which is good, but I also think I think we're more aware, it almost divides more, makes it seem like it's happening more. And it again, it builds more of this distrust. I always say, again, like I said, you have to look at what the cop could be thinking. Just because the guy's unarmed, if you know you hear he's reporting to a crime, if he doesn't know whether he's armed and the guy's coming at him, should different measures be taken? Should the taser be out? I don't know, depending on the distance and how close he is. I don't know the protocol. The other thing I would say is I don't know if this is done, but I feel like the police should have more training in how to deal with people, realizing that people are going to distrust them and you're going to have an attitude from a lot of people. And I think if they can work better with the community, that helps too. So I don't know. These are just a few of ideas, admittedly from someone who definitely leans in favor of the police. Not saying that they're all good and all these. I understand there are a lot of bad things that happen, but I do believe the majority of police officers are good people who are putting their lives on the line to protect us. We, you know, when it comes to the military, where everyone seems to be in agreement that we want to thank anyone who served our country in that way, but yet there's almost a hatred towards police, and I just feel like most of them are putting their lives on their line almost daily to protect us, and I do feel the majority of them deserve better than what they get. All right, so sorry I went on for so long. That probably didn't make it to the end if you watch any of this, but if you did, thanks for listening. Bye.